All right, friends, welcome back to the channel where I'm sharing about how to make great videos and get stuff done. And in today's episode, I want to discuss focus modes and more specifically, who wins the battle? Is it manual focus or autofocus? Okay, it's not actually a battle because I love to use both, and here's why. And before I share my advice on why I think using both focus modes will make you a better filmmaker, I want to say a few things about focus. And first of all, it's important. If you get back to editing your project and you've got a bunch of B-roll that is soft or blurry, you're going to be frustrated with your edit. Now, I'm sure you've seen those videos that some people are making where they're using footage that is in and out of focus. Maybe they're rolling back and forth. Maybe you call that artsy or cool, maybe, but that's usually an indicator to me that there's a lack of experience in a few areas, one of which is pulling focus. Now, of course, this can be a style that has purpose, but seeing people just rolling back and forth on the focus makes me think that they're just hoping for the best and then just having to use that artsy footage for whatever video that they're making. So knowing how to accurately focus your shot, whatever mode you're in, is important. So let's talk about why you should be using both focus modes, manual and autofocus. And we'll start with manual focus. First, knowing how to focus manually is a must if you want to be dangerous as a filmmaker. And a big part of that is that you've got to train your eyes for knowing what part of your shot is truly in focus. Not sort of, but sharp focus. And if you've got a lot of experience, you won't need to hear this, but if you're still gaining experience, maybe you're starting out, I'd encourage you to start with manual focus and practice, practice, practice. You cannot just go out to film something and then just guess what's in focus or simply depend on your autofocus to bail you out. The most reliable tool you have as a filmmaker is your eyes. And in the end, it doesn't matter what camera you're using, what specs it has, being able to nail focus manually yourself is one of the keys to success. Next, focusing manually gives you a lot more control and options when it comes to your composition. As a filmmaker, it's best to have complete control over your shot. And that applies to other settings, not just focus, but also with exposure and with white balance. Yeah, don't rely on auto settings. You want to make those decisions and not rely on your camera to choose those settings for you. One tip to consider with pulling focus is to utilize something like an external monitor or the electronic viewfinder on your camera. I've found that trying to pull focus while looking at a small LCD screen on your camera usually is a lot less dependable than viewing it on an external monitor or through your EVF. And yeah, there's functions on your camera that are supposedly helpful, like focus peaking, focus assist, but I don't actually really use those things. I've found that focus peaking more or less just feels distracting to me while I'm out shooting, so I don't actually use it. Magnification can be helpful, and it's kind of a simple way to just punch into your shot to check to see if your subject's in focus. But either way, I'd encourage you to practice pulling sharp focus and not depending on in-camera functions. Maybe you disagree with me, but that's just what I do. Now, we've talked a little bit about why to shoot with manual focus and having that as a starting point. Now let's look at the other side of the coin and why you should be using autofocus as well. Autofocus technology has come a long way in its reliability and in its options. Canon was sort of the front runner with their dual pixel autofocus, but now a lot of other companies have caught up, like Sony here. So my point about autofocus is that because it's reliable, it can be a fantastic tool that you can use in specific situations where you don't want to miss the moment or you want to track a subject in your frame. And if you're a run and gun filmmaker like me, you can't afford to miss some of those moments happening in real time. And autofocus has really helped me to eliminate some of those misses. I like to use autofocus when I'm using my camera on a gimbal setup. Now my camera, it doesn't always agree with me and make the choice that I want, but a lot of times it comes in very handy. I like to use my camera on a gimbal for wider establishing shots, and autofocus is great for that application, but it has proven to come in handy for some of those tighter tracking shots too. Now let's talk about face detection for a moment. It's awesome. I love using it when I'm tracking a subject in my shot, but one thing to note here is that if my shot has a lot of subjects in it, a lot of faces, it can sometimes be less helpful, especially if you're in a wider zone in your autofocus. It's going to pick up a lot of faces and you're going to see that little square over everyone's face, and your camera probably is just going to shuffle between some of those faces, and that's going to give you like a less desirable shot. So be careful using face detection. It can be super helpful, but it can also be hurtful to some of your shots. Another thing to note with autofocus is when you're in low light conditions. I've found that it's actually worked surprisingly well sometimes, but not all the time. And so I usually just turn it off when I'm in a low light situation and just rely on manual focus because it can be hit or miss. The last point that I'll make about autofocus is that I love to use it. I use it a lot. But you can't allow it to become a crutch for you as a filmmaker. You want to use it to your advantage, but not just because you don't feel like pulling the focus on the shot or you just want to see what you get. If you use it as a crutch, you'll likely have, a mixed bag of footage when you're editing. Some that you're going to like and some that were almost great, but you relied on your autofocus and it just didn't do the trick for you. So with this, I just want to say you've got to master focusing in manual, and then utilize autofocus to your advantage. I'm constantly switching between both when I'm filming in both handheld and on a gimbal. And a lot of times when I'm on a gimbal, if it's a slide shot or like an orbital shot, I'll set the focus using autofocus, and then I'll use a custom button that I've assigned to disable autofocus, and then I'll film my movement. And that kind of ensures that, the autofocus is not going to kind of reselect a part of the shot that is going to now be in focus once I start my move. So that works out really well. One composition that I love is shooting through stuff, meaning having something in the foreground of your shot that's out of focus and then focusing on something in the background. If you have autofocus enabled, a lot of times it has trouble and it's gonna continually be trying to focus on whatever's in front, in the foreground. So you have to turn off autofocus and use manual focus in order to get some of these really cool compositions. In the end, I think that focus should feel more like an instinct as a filmmaker. And yeah, there's gonna be times that you second guess yourself or you miss the focus, and that's okay. What's important is not to be discouraged. Keep going out with your camera, try to hold it as steady as you can, and pull focus over and over so that you get good at it, so you get comfortable with it, so that no matter what mode you're in, manual focus or autofocus, you're gonna feel comfortable knowing that you're nailing the focus and getting those awesome shots in focus every single time. All right, guys, thank you so much for stopping by the channel, for watching this episode. I hope that it was helpful for you. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button so that you'll know when the next video drops. Give me the thumbs up if you liked this video. And yeah, get out there and crush your focus. I'll see you next time.